What's Tamchu?
Outside.
Yeah.
Capture?
Camping again?
Camping.
He's camping everywhere this year. Okay. Anyway, good morning, good evening. Good evening, guys. Yes, Mr. Mark. He give up his Philip, come here. It's wonderful. Great effort. Oh. Anyway, it's according to Buddhism, first, we have your good practitioner or not. It depends on our motivation. And now what kind of motivation we need? What makes we a good practitioner, or what makes our practice good? The two things. The refuge in bodhicitta. Because we have refuge, it's bringing for us to Buddhism. If we have bodhicitta motivation, it's bringing for us to Mahayana practitioner. Therefore, that's important. Therefore, we always, any prayers, we are beginning there of refuge bodhicitta. Therefore, now I always say that the masters or the teachers always, even they recite Buddha Dharma Sangha, they change their face, then some smile or something like that. Therefore, those people have some more, power, blessing, more energies for practice. Because they have a strong faith with the Dharma Sangha. Of course, above that, according to Buddhism, it's Guru devotions most important. Even there's a I don't know English. Say, Karo, Kado Sanjil and Yamchio, Karo. Senior than a Chio, Karo.
What is?
He senior to the kitchen or Sanjil, H as a Karo. Kado Sanjil Yamakaros.
Garden.
Not Chixio. Get the kitchen borders, get senior to the kitchen borders.
Order.
Karo, Yendeg Chani. Kaddition and Sanjay Lapa, Indication and Sanjay Namdo, Kaddition and Sanjay Lapa, whatever.
That's the 10 minutes.
That was a kind. According to essay like that, I don't remember exactly the word. Even the teachers, according to Buddhism way, even the knowledge is same as Buddha, but the kindness is teachers more kind than Buddha. Why? Because we are very fortunate. Our karma, we never met the Buddha. And that we meet our teachers. The teacher asked to what's right, what's wrong. The teacher asked to teach you how to, free from the sufferings, free from the, samsara. Now, how to practice the word. Mother teach how to do things. The teacher, especially the Buddhism teacher, they teach us to how to, practice compassion, bodhicitta, loving kindness. They're the person to lead us to Buddhahood. Therefore, even same quality as Buddha, but from kindness, they teach us more kind than Buddha. Make sense? And that. Therefore, according to Buddhism, we need to, according to Buddhism, says, good guru devotion, then good refuge, and good, bodhicitta. That three come together. The same as now we have very delicious meal. According to very delicious food, we need to good soft things, a good cook. A lot of good things, but or chef doesn't know how to cook is or mess up. Therefore, there's according to Buddhism, there's three things very important. Therefore, good devotion, first you say you have to check, then you have the motivation to give the any teachings. Teacher has the motivation to give the teaching in your relationship. Spoken with wow, then was a lot of problems like that. Therefore, always to the three verses after three sentences after Kurukulla. You ask a teacher, stay here. Oh, yeah. You recite this every time. So visualization to receive the blessings from the teacher. And always recite in a refuge. In the morning, we have good motivation. And you recite the sentence in the Buddha Dharma Sangha, it's enough to motivation. It's good, it's possible, you recite and a little bit meditation, word by word, that become our practice become more powerful. Okay? I think it's important. And how much strong we have the refuge, bodhicitta, good devotion, and we have the more, we carry the more merit. Even we carry more merit, our practice become more successful. Our things become more successful, any kind. Therefore, merit is very important. Therefore, good the foundation of good quality, they explain the first verse. It's like that. Then it's a good motivation to bodhicitta motivation. That motivation to any activities become, or virtuous action. Therefore, those things like our daily practice is important. Usually, some masters or they recite the refuge. They always in the Buddha Dharma Sangha take refuge, enter enlightened. They recite that like hundreds, thousands, billions of times until they, something moving their mind. They recite. But the word makes to the meaning to more stuck our mind. Otherwise, just word you say, okay, they said that, oh, they said that, they're spelling that. It doesn't much fix our mind, our practice. Therefore, always we need important things, the chitta mind, and good refuge, good devotion, in order to they all become successful, we have a lot of maras blessing for us. If we don't know we got the blessing from that, something wrong, then we just go wrong direction. Therefore, we always to practice, also pray for Tara to please to blessing to my body, speech, mind, to not blessing from the maras. Therefore, maras take away our refuge, bodhicitta, good devotion, or practice. Therefore, because Dharma protector is what means whose practice the Dharma. There are also a lot of obstacles to maras. Therefore, Dharma protector have to help, or Dharma protector promise to help for them. Therefore, this is called Dharma protector. Dharma protection or protector. Protector. Okay? These are like basic things. Therefore, everyone knows Tara. Yes, it is easy. Okay. I'm just, it's going to education everywhere. Yeah, that doesn't go. I know bit of time. They page not each one, but that sure, number Tanta.
So now we've been talking about this tenets, right? So there are four basic, Buddhist tenets. So some people understand the Buddhist tenets as the four Tibetan Buddhist traditions, like the Nyingma, Gelug, Satya, and Kagyu. So that's not what we're talking about here.
Okay.
So in Buddhism, in general, in Buddhism, there are two vehicles: the Mahayana vehicle and the Hinayana vehicles, and then the tenets comes according to them. 초승기권에?
따와 공바 쇼바슴 지고 따고 쇼슴 간이고네 나 젤람 제버슴 나 냠내 제다 냠나 때람 받기 전에 좀더 오마레 고마고마 야야야 털털 노래서.
So the higher tenets are superior, or the later tenets are higher than the lower ones in terms of the three things, like in terms of the meditation, in terms of the view, and in terms of the conduct.
제상한도 캄바지에 깬자도거나 깬자 담보니에 야담요 촌이 좀 맞다. 고마 냠내 제발로 고마 도타데 시고 그래서.
And so it's just like when we are climbing up the stairs in the house. So you have to climb on the first layer of the stairs in order to get to the second layer of the stair. So then you go to the third, fourth, like that. And so just like that, in order to understand the later or the higher tenets, you have to understand the lower tenets first.
나도 정말 다 같이 슈르베탄다 마베탄다 니세. 나 슈르베탄다 세대 같이 가사가 다 캐닝에 다 슈르베탄다. 가사가 다 파케 밀랭에다 나바스 데도 시작이요.
So there are two kinds of tenets you can talk about, the Buddhist tenets and the non-Buddhist tenets. So the Buddhist tenets, non-Buddhist tenets are the tenets who asserts self of person, and the Buddhist tenets is the tenet that does not propound the self of person.
나도 저 당가도 때 철발에 때 저 안에 가도 담보 셔라바네 셔라마바래 셔당기 가사가 다 바꿔가다야 걔는 가지고 가사 다 캐내다 그래서.
And so the lowest tenets in Buddhism is the Vaibhashika, and Vaibhashika is
Well, what your down?
Sound인데.
Down just 저 get card out.
고민돼 된다. So among the four tenets, the Vaibhashika is the lowest in the Buddhist tenets. Still, it's better than the non-Buddhist tenets, and so because even speaker the all so anyway, so in the Vaibhashika tenets, there are, they don't believe or assert, the selfless, self person, but there are some the division of the Vaibhashika tenets that believes in self person. And in their tenets, there is not even a term of the selflessness of phenomena. And then a little bit higher than that, is the Sautrantika tenet, and the Sautrantika tenet also negates, the self of person. But still, there's not even a term, selflessness of phenomena. And then after that, is the mind-only school, or Chidamadri. And the Chidamadri, of course, negates, the self of person. And then, but they use the term, the selflessness of phenomena. But they do believe in the true existence. And then after that, comes the higher one is the Madhyamika, or the middle way school. And in the middle school, of course, they negate, the self of person, and they also negate, the true existence. So that becomes a pretty high level tenets. And the middle way school, or the entitylessness school. And so it's called the middle way, because it's in the middle of the two extremes, the extreme of nihilism and extreme of eternalism. And so that's why it's called the middle way, or Madhyamika. Okay. Okay. 제가 아니 그리고 유나 덴바 트고 땅다치 덴바만 맨도데 첸다치 제가 덴바 트고 말에 덴바 모르나 요리 티버르 샤이 그래서 아니 다 오마세데 되는거. So existing truly, is the eternalism, and not existing if it doesn't exist truly, is nihilism. And so, being, in between that, is what we call the Madhyamika, or middle way school. Okay. So that's saying that if it doesn't exist truly, but but it still exists even though it doesn't exist truly. 다 오마와 딘디 오마와 대기 텔라 오마 라지바제 다 오마 라지바 세티기 가지 라지 따서 개네그레스. And then in the Madhyamika school there comes two, the Sautrantika school and Prasangic Sautrantika Madhyamika, Savatrantika Madhyamika, and the Pasangika Madhemika and the Pasangika Savatandika Madhemika do not assert the true existence, however, do assert the inherent existence. So existing inherently, existing from its own side, existing by its own characteristic, are all same meaning, according to the Savatandika Madhyamika school. And so the Savatandika Madhyamika school is saying that there is, existing from its own side, there is existing inherently, there is existing by its own characteristics. So there's no existing truly or existing ultimately or existing perfectly.
Okay.
Do you understand that differences?
Okay, what mark this question? Okay.
So what do they say exist and what do they say don't exist?
You got it? You forgot?
They say that things exist inherently from their own side.
Is it? Okay. Okay, then what they don't accept? Okay, Jennifer.
They don't assert true existence.
And?
Which means, so they do not, they say things are not truly existent, but they are inherently existent.
Okay, Bob is correct. So
that three things that Geshe mentioned, like I said, it doesn't exist truly, doesn't exist ultimately, and doesn't exist perfectly.
You say that those are all the same?
Yeah, that's same.
So how do they exist? They exist inherently, they exist from their own side, and they exist by their own characteristic. How do they not exist? Is they do not exist in truly, they do not exist ultimately, and they do not exist perfectly.
Okay.
And so the meaning of existing from its one side and existing by its own characteristics. So when you search for something, with that name, so okay, this is what it's called, and when you look for that thing, you will find it.
What?
So that thing can be characterized. That's why it can be found, it can be characterized, and therefore it's called exist from its one side, existing inherently, existing by its one characteristic.
Okay, yeah, maybe a question.
Okay, so a lot of this is all the same stuff, right? What it all comes down to is, okay, like, if you look for something, right? We know 100% that it's empty, right? In the ultimate sense. What the debate is like this pen. So, okay, it's empty. Okay, 100%, no problem, right? But conventionally, you use words. So does this exist? Yeah, it's in my hand. Yeah, I write with you. Of course it exists. But not ultimately. What's the problem? Why not?
Claro.
Kunzobo duguores, kunzobo yoresra, kunzobo duguores. Ina turn tambo dugu amaresra. And kunzobo do kansan ko de nyugu de yores, korange tungure, korange de nyugu de teachores. And this is the kunzobo yores. Ina turn tambo yo amaresra. Turn tambo never say jinto kares.
Don't maybe Nandu 파 또베 파 샤바다 코랑은 인지가 인속은 맨나 코랑은 접촉을 말이야 파 땅에 놓으면나 코랑은 접촉을 말이야 다 라지블라
그러다 파마다 바당 랑을 마도 경원에 두고 그러.
네 코랑 투모 많이 먹고 코랑
전다
접촉을
봐도
어 접촉을 말했어
So, and according to the Savatantaka Madhyamika's view, the things exist, by being imputed by mind, plus exist from its one side. So it has to exist from its one side, and then it has to be leveled by mind also. So, it has to exist in that way. So if it doesn't exist in that way, if it doesn't have to exist in that way, then it can. If it exists truly, if it exists ultimately or truly, then it has to exist in that way, without being labeled or from its one side.
먼저요 로네멜라 나요 온거 잡아 이런 거 투모 들고 접어서지고 다 텐데 잡는 다네 노메 베까지 로 텐데라 나요 온거 잡아면 이런 거 투모 많이 베들고는 파치는 딱 막아와지 코랑은 투둑 접어이나 다 되버터 요레스
And so, an object that exists from its one side, without being labeled by a valid mind, without being labeled by a valid mind. So if there is such thing, then that thing exists truly, or that thing exists ultimately.
저랑 봐줘도 나도 내가 뺀 맞다와이나 나도 뺀들 미시 다셔는 그 미시 차대스
So, like, for example, the pen that you're using, if it was not labeled as a pen, and then it was labeled, instead it was labeled as a glasses, then it would be called glasses.
제가 안주는데 파 미달라라고 λέγ도
So it depends on how you label it, right? Because you label it as a pen, therefore it becomes pen.
So if I label a fish a bird, that means it can fly?
제가 아니 나도 로라 따고 파 따먹거나 아니 피시 버차로 그래
말에 더 누구들라 the fish the taba birds the taba na the 피투를 했어.
제자 코라랑 저 풀죠 다 풀게 거데
Yeah, so if it exists from its one side without being labeled by mind, then it should be able to fly.
파 코랑은 피 따야다 저바다 딩원의 판이자 냠소진의 그 샤바데 제 통해지고 그래 아니 내가 파 따먹고 코랑 샤바 제나 가리는 용거거든 용공이지거든
So, you can't label something as something, it has to have the meaning to label as that, so fish has a meaning and bird has a meaning, pen has a meaning, right? And so something that can write is called a pen. You can't just say something that, can fly is called a pen. No, that doesn't, match with the meaning of the pen. So you can't just call it anything. So something that can write, and that is called pen, by the mind, by a valid mind, and that also exists from its one side. That's how the pen exists. So the pen can't exist from its one side by itself without a valid mind labeling it as a pen.
Okay, can you find like something that is?
I agree 90%, but 10%.
Oh, that's good. That's good. It is a very high level. Okay, we're not finished. This is very complicated. It's true. It's a very sorrow, very complicated. It's not easy. Okay. 다 제자 다른 간도 라지바던데 다니는 나베나 다치 가로 데마머데 텐데 임버시에서 대기 다 치지 따섬가 랑 테니 쩨바나 아나 라지 따세 대켈레마다 라지발라 그래 고 다니지 가서요.
And so the Savatantaka Madhyamika, autonomous school, says that so like when you apply a syllogism to the like says the sound is impermanent because or sound is karsa the sound is not existing truly because it is a dependent rising, like that. So when you say that syllogism, is called the autonomous syllogism.
제가 대라 라지 따세 대켈레마다 라지 빠세 고 다니로들 다시로들 거.
And so that is called the autonomous, so syllogism, And those who believe or assert that, is called the autonomous school. Or who propound that is called the proponent, of the autonomous school. So this Savatandika Madhyamika asserts the things existing by their own characteristics. And so, because if you search for it, search for that character, of the object, and you can find it. You can find the object upon searching, and therefore it's existing by its own characteristics. And so therefore it exists, it exists from its one side, it exists, by its one characteristic, and it exists inherently. So they're all same meaning.
Okay.
So what doesn't exist, is that it existing from its one side, existing truly, existing ultimately, and existing perfectly is what doesn't exist.
Okay.
So that's like the brief meaning, of the Savatandika Madhyamika school.
Doctor, did you just translate that what does not exist was
existing truly, existing ultimately, and existing perfectly. So if it exists that way, then it has to exist, without it has to exist from its own side without being labeled by a valid mind.
So it does not exist truly, it does not exist ultimately, and it does not exist.
Yeah, so there's the translation, the perfectly. Let's go. Let me see if there's another term for that.
Yeah, you'll find it, okay?
I just said I heard something different, that's all.
Yeah. That book have that.
Yeah, but I need it.
Okay, now it's now we got a little bit basic, right? Something basic to all that, okay? Where we stop last week?
Yeah, there's the term, the perfect. Yang Dabar. Yang Dabar means existing perfectly. So Yang Dabar is the Yang Dabar. So it's existing perfectly just as it appears, or just as it exists.
Your thought is
Yeah.
Okay. When we stopped, remember last week?
So it's so how it exists is just like it is, It's not false. They're saying that it's not false. It's just like that. So that's why it's a perfect.
Remember where we stopped?
I think we got up to the etymology. So we talked about the divisions of the
Which one?
number 3 or number 4.
I think number 4. I'm going to dash it to the part up to it. I'm going to let Shiva say.
Called the Omabra one on you.
Omarajibe.
So we talked about the etymology already.
Pajitai, and that dash it to the Kaji Omarajabala, Kane, and Najushu Omarajabala.
Yeah, so the etymology is like why it's called the Savatandika Madhyamika, right?
Okay. And we done, okay, we graduated, okay. That is Shiva Denda. And that Rangutini Taba, Ranguni Taba, Rangi Taba, Tenda Chiba is.
So, sorry, I'm just going to move around. So existing, form is one side, existing by its own characteristic, and existing inherently is all same meaning.
아니 다 담아시 남까지 고대지 아니 내 마오지 아마 가자가 다음에 한모라 그랬어 아니 메가라 그랬어
Oh, sorry.
알레 데데 담아시 아니 대답 되나 집어래 들어와
Yeah,
Are you in the car?
yeah, I'm going in the car.
아 가래래 랑의 텐니에 잡아 랑은에다 라지 잡아 되지 되나 잡아 나는 나도 라베 봐
All right. So the any existing from existing inherently and existing and by its one characteristics are all same.
다 담아치 남까지 고대지 내 마음 봐 가자가 다음에 참원을 메가라 그래 그도 되마이라 그랬어
That is sundara.
담아시 남까 고대 내바 마음 봐나라 가자 뭐지 가자 다음에 참모지 들어라 메가라 그랬어
And then the non-compounded space, like the truest cessation and a past, a future, and subtle selflessness of person are all non-affirming negatives as well as conventional truths.
다 대다 덴바 주지 내로 참모는 안에 대다치 바래 대다 덴바라나 주니다 주니 아니 주지 다음에 참모 대다치 바래스 근데 대다 덴바라 그래
So ultimate truth, reality, and subtle selflessness of phenomena are mutually inclusive. So that means they're all same meaning.
오케이 아니 가르드나 가제 여와 강시라 주니 많이 미추 강이 받으라 아니 군도 덴바지 아니 대다 덴바라 아니 주니 잡스다 대다 덴모들나
So the conventional truth, is anything that exists which is not the ultimate truth is called the conventional truth. And then the ultimate truth is something that is anything that is a reality. That's the reality. That's called the ultimate truth.
난 니는 것이 가려 하고는 간지 대다 덴발라 주니에 잡 대마이베 땅뭐 가려나 구도도 많이 보고 그래서 다 드나이 거고
So if it is ultimate truth, it has to be reality, and anything other than that, any other phenomena other than that, is the conventional truth.
오케이 다 대니로다 다 대만이로다 다 대니로다 가이 보대
So now here the two truths are explained, or asserted in a different way, right?
그러와 그러나 아니 구도 덴바이나 아니 내 마음 바이 뭐 작은 뭐 적대가 말다 나 너마시 남과도 못해도 던솔라 메가라 그래 구도 덴바이나 맞지 구도 덴바나 대파고 그셔 말다 군도 덴바이나 너마시 남카인 거 같다 고대인 거 같다 내바도 마음바 티크샤 말해 던도 구도 덴바이나래 메가라 그래서
And so earlier when we talked about the non-compounded space, true existing, past, future, and subtle substance of a person are are conventional truth, But it doesn't mean that if it's conventional truth, it has to be them, So there are conventional truth as well as non-affirming negative.
왜 자기나 본바다부터 군도 덴바래 이난도 저 지오 말해
For example, like a vase, is a conventional truth, but it's not any of the others that mentioned here.
오케이 나 대다 덴바라 가르고 주니고 그래 주니 담에 처먹고 그래서
And for the ultimate truth, it has to be the reality. It has to be selflessness of phenomena, the subtle selflessness of phenomena.
오다 니 강을 샘소만 너대와 사람과 chen 말하고 자소와 내니로던데
And so now this is very different, from the Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, and Chittamartin schools, right?
오케이 다 되다가 시작이다
So I'm going to stop here.
도대시 오마왔다 나스 주소 땡아 시바도 뭐 타대지스 대체 참여서 베라바 쇼트네라바 케네그레스
And then we move to the other part where it says the Sautrantika Madhyamika asserts that the five sense objects from form, etc., are of different entities from consciousness, and there are gross external objects composed of partless particles.
다들 가르쳤나 가전에 주소대가 시작한 가르쳤나 미시다고데 나 번드 미시다고 범할 때 제가 와서 번드 미시다 범한 진대 차대 가서 뭐 다들 차도 그래.
So for example, like the eye consciousness, grasping, at a vase, and it comes from the vase, right? And so therefore, because the vase and the eye consciousness grasping at the vase, it becomes like the cause and effect. Therefore, there are different entities.
오케이. 아니 다 대체점에서 봐 쇼 근데 대체점에서 봐 라바 걔네들이 텔레 쇼트들 발라 그래. 단데 너도 같이 봐라.
And then it says the external object composed of particles, are called the gross, external objects, gross. And so did you got there?
너도 같이 봐라. 너도 같이 봐라. 너도 바꾸니 너도 같이 봐라.
So this is same as the Sautrantika school.
다 나중에 오마다 샘서 맞지 봐나 주소 땡아와데 아니 가로 주소 땡아 라운드 미시바나 뭐 치게 되나 다시부 다니데 버래 되니 다니 와자서다 이터반자 진에도 오마레스 다니데 버인자 뭐 치차서레스.
So according to the Yogacara Sautrantika Madhyamika, which is similar to the Chitta school, assert that the five sense objects, form, etc., are one entity, with the consciousness apprehending them.
예? 당아와 이진납시 강사도 받쳐와이나 파파파파파파나 그 이진납시 되는데 어서 나대 군다고요.
And so now that's about the object, the mode of asserting object, and now it's the mode of asserting object possessor. The fifth one, which is called where it says the Sautrantika Madhyamika asserts a group of six consciousnesses, and the mental consciousness is the illustration of the person. And so when you look for the person, when you look further and further, for a person, then you find the mental consciousness as the person.
오케이, 단남시 또 제켈링 수래.
So which school asserts a group of eight consciousnesses?
Group, collective,
Yeah, who believe?
mind only.
Huh?
Mind only.
Good. What are the two extra ones? What are they? What are the he believe the two extra?
I can't understand.
What were the two extra consciousnesses?
Yeah.
The collective, collective conscious, or they call it Alya Vinya, right? And then they have the kleshas, klesha consciousness. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but
What is it?
Well, the English translation with the mind basis of all and you.
my base is all collective. Yeah.
Good. That's good. Yeah. I thought Mark sleeping. He's listening to that.
It's in the same
Oh, you do.
division of the mind.
Well, that was Where's my rubber band?
Okay. That's good. If you know like that, that's good. Good enough, What's that in the watch? That Tamala, that Lola Tamala Tamil is that Tamalaji, that Tamil on the color.
So that's about the person, and the next, the mind. And so that there are two types of mind: valid cognizers and non-valid cognizers, right? So what is valid cognizer?
Well, goodness.
An awareness that gets at its object.
Okay. What is another one? 다 데데 칼레 도와 다 테마스면 다 돈벌 안에서 테마 제대로 테마는님은 좀 도안 되려라.
Yeah, so there are two valid cognizers, right? Two kinds of valid cognizer: valid direct perceiver and valid inferential cognizers. There's only two types.
Okay. 나중에도 테마라. 내도 테마 제스퍼베 테마 가로. 라링에서 나중에도 가로.
말해. 된 것은 들으라.
네.
된 것은
테마라.
말해. 테마라.
알레 라링에서 내 라링에서 저면은 가래.
다 라린 것은 다 이긴 나 가서 옹봉 옷음, 이긴 옷음, 다른 옷음 안에 나중 옷음 시사라. 생 옷음라 샤거라.
그래서 다 테말라 예 아니 내가 테마 제가 테마 야 따다 맞지 따다 맞지 테말라 내 생에 지나까지 또 봐야 제방이 지요래서 따다 맞지라. 아 너대시 오마다 나라리 메드지 제시에 된다 예스라 전대지 예스나 단 너대시 오마나 안에 라링에서 너 말해 대자 안에 예스 테마 메와치 라링에서 메와치 테마 숨어지 말했어. 아 나주 쇼마라지 왔다나 안에 예스라 전대지 예스.
저는 옷음라 다 테마 말아.
근데
옷음라.
당에서 맞지.
Yeah, so and then there's this Saudantega Madameka do not assert self-cognizing direct perceivers. So just like the Saudantega Madameka, the Saudantega school, and then the Yogacara Saudantega Madameka asserts in all 4 types of direct perceivers: the self-cognizing direct perceiver and yogic direct perceiver are pervaded by non-mistaken consciousness.
다 라링에도 나중에 마티비지 잡아다 제니나 토마토 니가 예스.
And then the other 2 types of direct perceiver have instance of both mistaken and non-mistaken consciousness.
ane karo 제니데 karo 라링에서 이징에서 난중에서 바로 시디 karo.
So what are the types of the other 2 types of direct perceivers?
The 2 types of what?
Perceiver. The last 2. 라링에서 나중에 마티비지 잡지. 제니나 토마토 니가 제니 karo.
So the self-cognizing direct perceiver and yogic direct perceiver are pervaded by non-mistaken consciousness, right? And then the other 2 types of direct perceivers have instance of both mistaken and non-mistaken consciousness. So what are the other 2 types of direct perceivers?
Sense direct perceiver and mental direct perceiver.
Okay. 온몸에서 이징에서 니라.
Yeah, that's right.
That's good. You got it? 다 너서 너는 뭐야? 다 된다 뭐다? 너 대화지. 샘소마치. 오말 하제바 남지. 다 녜슬라 또버 또레시 비차가래. 다 너서 마치 좀 지바이 마치.
It says Sautantika, Chittamatra, and Savatantika all assert that direct perceivers are pervaded by non-conceptual consciousness.
뭐지? 엔다타는 샘 거리 시라마베 녜슬라 또바트라와 너무 말해.
So, but what about the Vaivashika school? They don't assert that direct perceiver are pervaded by non-conceptual consciousness?
대체하도 홍보입니다. This is homework, okay?
Say it again.
This is the homework.
That's going to be your homework to find out, okay?
네 나라도와 도셈이가는 도대와 샘소만이가 돼. 네가 하지만 남지 녜슬라 또레시 차바는 시라마 파피다도.
So it says here, right? Sautantika, Chittamatra, and Savatantika all assert that direct perceiver are pervaded by non-conceptual consciousness, right? So that omitted, the Vaivashika school, right? So they're saying that Vaivashika school does not assert. So why is that?
You already did that homework.
Really? What the homework? What question? What is it?
Remember when we had to come up with a definition for a sense direct perceiver in the Vaivashika.
Okay. then 안에 시라메블라 녜생이 또바 이게 어려워.
So is there a direct perceiver that is conceptual in Vaivashika school?
It's not pervaded by consciousness.
얘는 또바 잡이 잡으셔. 시라메블라 녜생이 또바 잡이 잡으셔. 또바 많이 잡으셔.
So the Vaivashika, according to the Vaivashika school, if it is a direct perceiver, it is necessary to be not conceptual consciousness, right?
또바 많이 잡으셔.
So it's necessary that it's not conceptual consciousness, right?
It's necessary that it's not a consciousness.
Not conceptual consciousness.
Oh,
You got it?
necessary. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about it's that 내 시발을 그렇게 하면 똑바로 자고 그렇게 해야 돼.
No, not talking about consciousness. Not talking about if they're not consciousness. It's not talking about if they are not conceptual consciousness.
오케이. 내 똑바로 자와래. 내 미시도 똑바로 자와래.
So, for example, this my glasses. Is this free from the conceptual consciousness or not?
알바, 막, 알바.
It's conceptual.
Is it free from conceptual consciousness?
Yeah.
No, not when I look at it.
If you label it, it's automatically conceptual, though.
내 똑바로 해.
Is it conceptual?
As soon as you call it glasses, it's conceptual consciousness.
알았어?
미시 똑바로 셔버렸어.
미시도 시발을 해.
So the glasses is conceptual consciousness?
아, 너는 지저트나 시발이 차다. 지저트나 시발이 차다.
You're gonna say, it's,
So you-
you're gonna trick us to say, well, no, it's sense, but when you label it, it's conceptual.
The
So
sense,
you're saying the glasses is the spectacle that the Geshe has, is consciousness?
쟤도 똑바로 똑바로 자라.
So because it's
Shiba-
not conceptual consciousness, right? It's not consciousness. So it cannot be conceptual consciousness either. So because it's not conceptual consciousness, so therefore it is free from conceptual consciousness, right?
내려다는데 도생이다 얘들아 또래 얘들아 똑바 많이 고르라고 똑바 자는 똑바 말이라고 돼 똑바 많이 고르라고 돼 대충 하고 있다 뭐
So like it says here, 똑보다 더 왔어.
도생이가 다 라지바는 얘들아 또래지 잡았다
So
Okay.
it says as though that the direct perceivers are pervaded by non-conceptual consciousness. So non-conceptual consciousness means like free from conceptual consciousness.
똑바네 오케이 에고 내 똑바 말아봐 임시에
So like that, therefore my glasses, is not conceptual consciousness, right?
똑라고
Is
No,
it non-conceptual consciousness or not?
what is it
Non-conceptual or not?
I don't know what the question is, right?
my question is 샤라메 룰라 시파 잉이가 아니 똑바도 처음에 여러베스 니나 샤라모 파피타도
So Geshe-la's question is, in the Vaibhashika school, is there a consciousness that is free from, is there a direct perceiver that is free from non-conceptual consciousness?
yes no
So that's free from the conceptual consciousness. Yeah.
가지 니는 샤라모 파피타도 안 되다
So peace in our the malabra.
니나 라면도 참 말하면 다 군디나 투이메로
Because it is the Vaibhashika school is not mentioned here, right?
맨체다 아니 공예생이 똑바도 잡아만 그 캔래 그래
So therefore, maybe they're saying that the Vaibhashika school asserts, so some of the direct perceiver, to be conceptual consciousness.
에다네 샤라모
They assert some of the direct perceivers are not consciousnesses. So
Some of the direct perceiver are conceptual consciousness.
you got it
I see.
No,
I see.
because
Wait.
what's bothering me is like,
it doesn't bother you
well, if you label something,
okay
by definition, it's a conception. No?
I say
You're talking about a direct receiver though.
And the direct perceiver, do they still label?
No.
Okay, they didn't ask that. They said
No, but-
a object. So once you say a pen, a notebook, you've labeled it. How can you be a direct perceiver then? You're no longer. You've labeled it. Ask that.
It's the definition of it. That's it. Yeah, all direct perceivers are pervaded by.
it's make a little come for you guys how about Rika and Devra Margaret William
Geshe-la, Vaibhashika their definition of isn't it their valid sense direct perceivers are not pervaded by consciousness.
No, I'm
So-
not asking consciousness. We are not under consciousness. The
But you're
consciousness is not-
saying non-conceptual consciousness. You're
Yeah.
talking about non-conceptual consciousness.
exactly.
Mm,
They
they
will
say
talk
the
about the
visual sense power is a valid direct perceiver. So it's non-conceptual.
There's-
Consciousness, so
Right.
So yeah, so like
Okay.
it said in the text, it says Sautantika, Chittamatra, and Savatantika, right? It doesn't mention about the Vaibhashika. So
Right.
these schools believe that direct perceiver are provided by non-conceptual consciousness. So that means anything that is a direct perceiver in these schools has to be non-conceptual, right? So that means because it did not mention Vaibhashika, so Geshe's question is Vaibhashika believing that there is some direct perceivers that are conceptual consciousness?
I don't know why we they don't mention here.
Because then it would say that they were pervaded by consciousness, and they're not pervaded by consciousness. So if they were included there in that sentence, it would,
Yeah, Vaibhashika is not included there.
right, exactly. And the reason isn't because they have a direct perceiver that is conceptual. It's because they have a direct perceiver that's not consciousness.
제가 나 걸리면 또
아,
봐.
네네네.
야,
뭐라는 것은 모나스나 땅 가서 가서나 대나랑 가서 또 가서 무슨 인거라 쉐바만 요스 그래서 자다마기.
제가 시바 많이 또 또봐 많이 또봐 타워로.
마 쉐바만 인거 거다 뭐.
시바 많이 또 또봐 말아.
맞다 내가 또배 쉐바라스들.
또봐 타워로. 시바 많이 또 또봐 타워로.
말에다 그 가서 the 무슨이나 동맥의 쉐바에 잡스 거다.
제가 또봐 타고라로. 또봐 타비 타고.
또배 쉐바다 타고 그래.
또비 시바 타고로. 제가 아니 또봐 많이 나 또비 시바 타비 차고로.
똑바 많이 있나?
또비 시바 타비 차고로.
말하다는데 나 저랑라 동맥 쉐바스야다 동맥 쉐바스야다 또 똑바다 가외 쉐바스 가셔야겠다.
그래는 다데. 이제다 몰라도 오멍에서 나로 오멍에서 시바 말 간도 나가 이 콘도 나게와. 이제
그래.
봐야 돼. 이제도 될 오멍에서 돼 주도 먹이 시바데 엔행에서 이제 시바 말라지요.
홍보선 돼.
나 데코도 대하고다.
홍보선 돼 테마이.
테마 있어. 시바 많이 있어.
홍보선 돼.
야, 주도 먹에서 테마래다요.
홍보선 돼라다. 알려.
제다다 난데 따시 당요. 시다 몰라도 좀 돈도래. 따시 당요 돼.
홍보선 돼 테마 많이. 테마래 이나 쉐바
시바 말했어.
이나 테마 있으라.
야. 데코도 대하고다. 대들이시나. 난데 따시 당요 다데.
So this is the term. This is the tricky term. It's about the non-conceptual, right? So when you say non-conceptual, what does it mean? It means free from conceptual, right? So if it means free from conceptual, that means it's not conceptual, right? So something that is not conceptual is free from conceptual. So if it is free from conceptual, then it has to be non-conceptual, right? So that's the tricky part. So Geshe is saying the glasses he has in his hand is not conceptual, right? It's not conceptual. That's true. But is it a non-conceptual consciousness? No, right? But non-conceptual means it's not conceptual. You understand? So that's the word the debate comes into.
Understand? You don't get okay. This one. It's good. Okay, it's not. There's 다 제시라 테마만 잡고 keleng rest 다 keleng.
So anyway, so that's the part that people can debate about. Non-conceptual means not conceptual. So glasses is not conceptual. Yeah, that's true, right? It's a not conceptual consciousness. It's not a conceptual consciousness. But is it a non-conceptual consciousness? That's the tricky part. Anyway, so that's the part you can debate about, right? There's a not conceptual consciousness and non-conceptual consciousness. There's two different ones. So and then and then later anyway further it says that that a subsequent cognizer is necessarily a consciousness that is not a valid cognizer. So according to the Savatantaka mathematical school, the subsequent cognizer is necessarily not a valid cognizer.
다 랑게 셀 TV 리발 로셰고 그래서
And then that consciousness is mistaken with respect to their determined object are provided by wrong consciousness.
다 주들한 티신 주들 참 많이 차 그래서
If that that if it is a mistaken consciousness with respect to the phenomena, to our phenomena, it is necessary a non-valid mind with respect to that phenomena.
다 제바 테만 랑게 나이라 참 많이 잡았겠네 그래서
And that if it is an inferential cognizer, it is necessarily a non-valid mind with respect to its appearing object, and so forth.
오케이 아네 나 제바 테마데 테마래 봐
So, like the inferential cognizer is a valid cognizer, right?
와 아니 티셔래 봐 제바 테마는 나이라 랑게 나이라 로셰로 왔어
So, like it says, the two types of valid cognizers, drug valid cognizers and the inferential valid cognizer, right? So, if it is an inferential valid cognizer, then is it necessary to be a non-valid mind with respect to its appearing object?
Necessary to be in, say again?
아니 제바 테마데 테마 말해 봐
Inferential cognizer, is not a valid cognizer. Isn't an inferential cognizer a valid cognizer?
Yes.
말에 로셰로 왔어
It's not a valid cognizer, right? Because it is a mistaken consciousness.
yes no
That's valid.
말에 로셰로 왔어 로셰 받는 티셔야 봐
It is a wrong consciousness because it's a mistaken consciousness.
티셔는 로셰 그걸 납도 가들
So if it is a mistaken consciousness, then it has to be wrong consciousness, right?
yes no
Right, what he just said,
Yes,
if
no.
it's mistaken, it's wrong
But
consciousness.
it's not mistaken, not with respect to it.
인바다 나이라 랑게 나이라 저기 봐
It is mistaken consciousness because it is a non-valid mind with respect to its appearing object.
Right.
스페셜 간다랑 나이라 좋아하는 그 뒤져도
It is said here, right? It is said here that if it is an inferential cognizer, it is necessarily a non-valid mind with respect to its appearing object.
가다 텔레 티셔 차대 그래서
So because it is non-valid mind with respect to its appearing object, therefore it is a mistaken consciousness.
You got it?
I got it, but I have a question when Jennifer's done.
Okay. Do you got it?
I just wanted to think back, we were talking about how if it's, let's take the inferential cognition that understands that sound is impermanent due to being a product. That
오, 쟤도 되게 제바다. 자치 못하도 시험하면 내리게 드라마타와 또 별로 된 주시래 왜?
So like in that syllogism, right, where you say sound is impermanent because it's a product. So the mind that recognizes, or the mind that realizes the sound to be impermanent is a mistaken consciousness.
no, that's the valid consciousness.
어, 대 제바트만 많이 받았대.
So isn't that an inferential cognizer?
Yes.
아니 나이랑 주시 많이 받아.
And isn't it mistaken with respect to its appearing object?
Well, let's say the emptiness of, let's say, of permanence is implicitly realized, is appearing, and that is not.
그래?
Well, I'm trying to think.
Okay, think about think.
Definition.
Do you got some different? Mark, you got some different? Little confused here?
Even something, I'm just trying to clarify in my mind, right?
Okay,
When you say I have a direct perception of this notebook, right?
yeah,
It's based on my eye.
yeah.
And from that point, my mind conceptualize it to be a true direct, right? Like, I don't see the fibers of the wood in the paper. I don't see the atoms, the molecules, the particles, the waves. So is it really a direct? Very limited direct. That's so all of these schools, right? It seems like it's a word game. They're looking from conventional reality, they say this, 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 this. If you're looking from ultimate realities, no, this is, it just seems like it's a silly game based on where, no, but you have to look at both exactly conventional, yes, it's real, and ultimate, but they just seem to be playing word games with those two perspectives.
No, if you feel like it's a war game, that it's not really a war game. There's a lot of meanings behind that. So,
Really?
therefore, anyway, this guy, you got the homework, okay? Jeba in a ranga naila, Tamama, Jeba in a ranga naila, Tamama, Chavish Labdos.
Mm-hmm.
Chap Jeda ranga naila, Chugur and Chua, and then kind of the Tijana Loshim Chalado Kanda.
And so it says here, right, inferential cognizer, it is necessarily a non-valid mind with respect to its creating object. If it is a non-valid mind, then it has to be mistaken. So if it is a mistaken, then it has to be wrong, right?
Okay. That Dramataba Tongi Jeba, the Dramataba and Tisha as not to color.
So the inferential valid cognizer that cognizes sound to be impermanent, is it mistaken, with respect to the sound, being impermanent? What would you say?
Yeah, this is Dila Toba and Tisham Chart, Toba and Tisham Code.
So here, if it is a conceptual, it has to be mistaken.
Dina Lando, Ranga Shell and Tawada, Ranga Nile and Toja, tell Ranga Shed and Nile the Kaka Zoka, Kashina is called Tetikwa Kalling. Shed and Nile.
So, so here it talks about with respect to their determined object and with respect to their appearing object. So this is what you have to understand the difference here.
Can you use smoke and fire, please? Inferential cognition of fire using smoke. This example.
Yeah, Chair the Degum, Pila Mayo was Mayo Sare, Toadula, Tendiga, Mayo, Toy, May Toba, Toba, and Tisha Lagoda, Mayla Tisha.
So someone who understands there is a fire because of seeing a smoke, right? And so that understanding, is a conceptual. That's what it's saying.
Tell Japoris.
So that understanding is a conceptual, and that is inferential cognizer. And because it is a conceptual, so therefore, is it mistaken?
It can be if the smoke is still there, but the fire is out. The smoke is there, but the fire is out. There is no fire at the moment. So it's not true that there is a fire. There was a fire, but there is still smoke in the room.
But this guy don't got homework, okay? You got to think this too tricky in this sense.
So yeah,
Okay.
so that's still a valid cognizer, because if there was no fire, there cannot be smoke. So if there is a smoke, there must have been a fire, even though it's not there at that time. but at some point there was a fire which produced the smoke. Otherwise, there could not be smoke. So, so understanding that there is a fire, by seeing the smoke, is a valid mind. But because it's an inferential, you don't see it directly. It's not a direct perceiver. It's an inferential. Now, therefore, this school is saying that it's a conceptual. And if it's a conceptual, isn't it necessary to be a mistaken? So this is your homework, okay?
If I have dry ice and I put water on the dry ice, a cloud comes off that looks like smoke. So I could perceive it and say, oh, there's smoke. But really it's dry ice and with water like they do on a stage. And it looks like smoke coming, but it's not smoke. It's only dry ice. So
that's not a correct reason. That's inferential cognizer has to be a correct reason. That's not a correct reason. The
right.
reason saying that looks like a smoke is not a correct because it's not a smoke.
So is the homework related to the fact that they say there's two valid minds and a valid
Okay.
cognizer, the valid.
homework
And so why is it that they say it's valid inferential cognizer there, and then when you go on to it, it says that it's mistaken?
Okay, homework is okay. First we begin, okay. Ranga shell and TV ripple loshi chapter. Ranga shell at the car, Ranga shell at the carrying of the goddess. Shiba Thamana Shen Yorwe, shell and the Carla goddess.
So this is I think this is or you can say like this way. Mistaken, that consciousness mistaken with respect to their determined object, right, are perverted by wrong consciousness, right? So anything, that's respect to their determined object are perverted by wrong consciousness. So is there a determined object, to every consciousness?
Okay. This is the homework, okay? It's my question. Is all the consciousness has got a determined object?
Yeah.
Okay. And the Jabathema Naya the Karis.
And what is
Jabathema Naya Karis, She Karis.
and what is the appearing object, of the inferential cognizer, and what is the determined object of the inferential cognizer?
What tending was Tendi Yabu Hakoyana, Jabathema Teranga Nayla Trisha na Shela Tema is Okat Nishin Kashador.
So if you understand that, the determined object of the inferential cognizer and the appearing object of the inferential cognizer, then you will be able to say, yes, with respect to its determined object, it is not mistaken. With respect to its appearing object, it's mistaken like that.
Kanla the Chudel and Trisha, Chudel Temam of the counter Kale Japson.
So it is said that, right, in the, it says, but we're non-conceptual consciousness, that subsequent cognizer is necessarily a consciousness that is not fairly cognizer. That consciousness mistaken with respect to their determined object are perverted by wrong consciousness.
Okay. Chudel and Trisha in that Temam of Chaps.
Call of the
Ranga Shela and TV Shibala Loshi Chapata. Chudel and Trisha in that Chudel Temam Chapata. Japan Ranga Naila Tamacha Kelimichus.
So this says that if it is a mistaken consciousness with respect to a phenomena, it is necessarily a non-valid mind with respect to that phenomena. Chudela Tushe in a Chudela Temam Chaps.
Temam Chaps.
Loshila Meduda, yeah.
Loshi Kala, Ranga Shela TV Bala Loshi Chaps. Can't.
And Chodela Tushe in a Chodela the Temam Chaps.
Temam Chaps. Here's Yodamata and Ranga Shela TV Ribala Loshi Chalado.
Oh, the Ranga Shela to Ribala Loshi Chaps.
Oh, Che that Tal. She said the carriers, nine said the carrier, Japan, Nila Temam go, Japan Temam go Lagmado, Japan Nila Temam goes, 가는 하일은 투시레스. 얘다 제복 나의 가르레스.
So it says that the inferential cognizer is if it is in an inferential cognizer, it is necessarily a non-valid mind with respect to its appearing object, right? Not necessarily in general, but with respect to its appearing object only. Right? So therefore, you have to understand what is its appearing object,
And the shares that.
and also what is the the determined object of the inferential cognizer.
어때 하고 나니 시바된 투시에다 가원트도 가원트면 참아가는데 가하고.
And then if you understand that, then you will be able to make the difference of that mind which is mistaken and which is not mistaken, which is mistaken with respect to what and so forth.
Okay. Okay, now last homework. Remember? What be
It
homework?
was like, what's the difference between a self and a person?
What's the difference? Who has answered? Rika, you have answered. Deborah, you have answered. William, you have answered. Margaret, Karen. Okay, Deborah.
So a person is just the 5 aggregates. The self is the concept that overlays the 5 aggregates, which is not truly existent.
True or not? I say. This correct or not?
I would say that is incorrect.
Okay. Okay, how about Rika?
So I found in general, self and a person and I in general are equivalent, but I found 2 Tibetan words that is different meaning. One is that Geshe mentioned last week, Buddha is the dog, and then the other one was Gagzan. And then that's also, they translate to English, sometimes self, sometimes person. They change the translation sometimes. So the dog is inherent existent, permanent, unitary, independent, like self, the self or I. But the Gagza, the person, the definition is, I found that in His Holiness's book, is a living being that is imputed independence of any of the 5 aggregates. That's the definition from this book.
Okay, Bob, how's it? Her answer.
Sounds a pretty good answer.
Okay, good. Looking your pass. Okay, who has? Margaret? William, you have some?
Yeah,
Yes, go ahead. Yeah, okay. Yeah, Margaret, go ahead. Then William, okay?
Oh, okay.
Okay, Mark, your job, okay?
I agree with Rika that the self and person are usually used like mutually inclusive. They seem to refer to the same thing. The definition of the person, depending on the different tenets, the different schools, the person can be the 5 aggregates or the mental consciousness, or in the Madhyamika school is like, it's the Tenjung. I don't know Tibetan. It's the I that exists by depending on the 5 aggregates. But then I think, like, go back to the usage of the self and persons are usually referring to the same.
Yeah, Mark, how's it?
I had a totally different way. I just did it on my own without studying.
Okay.
Like I said, like self, I'm referring to me. I don't say she self and he self, right?
Okay,
So
that's good. Okay, and she's not correct. According to you, she's not correct. Incorrect. Okay, William.
well, I started a different way. Self, the word a permanent self, a permanent self. So the thing that is refuted in Buddhism, anatta, anatman. So atman is the self, That is the permanent self. And this is refuted by all Buddhist schools. You cannot be a Buddhist and not refute the Atman. So that is the self, the self in Hinduism and pre-Buddhist schools. So this does not exist. This is refuted by the Buddha. Another word for person is Pudgala, and Pudgala is a word there's Pudgalavadins. The Pudgalavadins are early Buddhists in India, and they believe that there needs to be a vehicle for the rebirth, for the continuation of life, for the carrying of karma, for the carrying of the burden of the 5 aggregates. So this is called the Pudgala, and the Pudgala is maintained by a large number of Buddhists in the early schools in India. The Sautantrika, Vaibhashika Sautantrika, there were a large number, 5 different schools had the Pudgala, and the Pudgala is defined by, it's not the same as the aggregates, but it's not different from the aggregates. So this is a mystery. It's mysterious. It's not the same as the aggregates, but it's not different from the aggregates. And the reason is you have to have, if it is the aggregates die. When you die, your body, your aggregates are dispersed. So if it were the aggregates, it would die too. So you need something to carry the aggregates and to carry the skandhas into the next life, and to accumulate the karma to go into the next life. They call this the Pudgala, which is a person, but it's very tricky how they define it, because it's not a permanent person. I remember Nagarjuna in an explanation from the 12 links saying, with the last flame of the candle, you light the flame of the next candle, and so the last light of the candle lights the next candle. So the next candle, is it the same light? Is it the same light, or is it a different light? And this is kind of the idea, I think, is the idea of the Pudgala. The other reason they had to have a Pudgala is because in early Buddhism, when you die, you immediately are reborn. There's no bardo state, there's no intermediate state. So how do you account for what transfers the life in the past life to the future life? Maybe you're born 100 miles away, you're born someplace else. What carries this? What carries this person on to the next life? So this is Pudgala, and this is not a high school, but this is the idea that they had to have in order. So a self is Atman, and is refuted, and Pudgala is maybe refuted by higher schools, but it is an idea that was very popular for thousands of years in India before the conquest, before Buddhism. This is what I studied. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's true.
That's most, there are different schools believe different. Anmaran karo them.
Atman andire da dagledre.
There are.
네.
You're like yeah. And then
저는 열었을 거다.
you share more shit there.
네.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. You study a lot of different schools. That's good. That's good. Good information. Okay, Karen, you have something? I just need to. It's the same or different.
Lots of great ideas there. Person is for me, is a designation on form in mental consciousness.
Okay.
Self, I can't remember all the things that I thought about self, so I'm going to pass on that.
Okay, that's good. Okay. Linda, you have something you need to say? Okay, it's fine, yeah. Okay, now who's left? Bob and Mark. What's your? Is same or different? I just need to serve and person, same or different? Okay, what's different both? Okay, give me the example. Serve, no. I said, no, I said, no
Self,
person.
which is not a person.
Yeah, give me one example. Serve, no person. then you know the different or same. Because we say cup and glass different. Yeah, this is a cup, there's no glass. You can say easily, right? Therefore, you say, give me one person, but not one serve, no person.
At least that's right, they're different.
Okay, Bob.
I think this is the same. I forgot to study, but I think it's the same.
Okay, Jennifer.
It depends on the context. I mean, if you're just using it terminologically, like in Morib, yes, self and person are mutually inclusive, but in the context of self of persons or the selflessness of persons, the persons is the basis upon which the self is negated. So
what
persons is the conventionally existent.
what the conclusion? Is the same or different?
Different.
Or different? Okay,
Different.
give me one. Is
Well,
a
here's the
person, not
difference.
serve.
A self is a non-existent, whereas person is a non-associated compositional factor.
Then we have the contradict. Person and self is like contradiction.
Why is that a contradiction? If we say a self is a non-existent and a
Okay.
person is a non-associated compositional factor.
So you're saying the self is non-existent?
Yes, if you look at phenomena and divided in the selfless, which in the Buddhist world, the basic division of all phenomena is the selfless, and that is divided into existence.
No. Jennifer, this talking about the selfless, not talking about self. That's not talking about self. It says selflessness of person. It's not saying self of person. So selflessness of person, right? Self of person.
That's where it came up, because when we were debating, self persons, the question came up, what's the difference between a self and a person? And you say that in the context of self persons.
So, but you're saying in general, it's the same. But in that context, the self doesn't exist, right?
Self doesn't exist, yeah.
Yeah. That 뭐라 쓰나? 지당 지찬에 나다 가서니 찍거랬어. 이나다네 다 이나가도 나 매세 나들라 나스도네 내 거양 대 나디 요 말했어. 남에게 나디 요 말했어. 남에게 나디 요 말했어. 이나 나다 가서니 지당 전에 나다 가서 찍거랬어. 이나 남에게 나디 요 말했어. 남에게 값게 나지요라. 남에게 값게 나디 요 말했어.
갈로다대.
다음에 뵙게 말이 요 말했어. 따따라데. 따따라.
Okay.
내가 당가서 가장 안 있게 좀 봐.
Yeah. 제가 식당 가서
다저 모디 다레베스. 뭐 다레베 뭐 가서랬어 나는.
제가 전화 다르와.
So you are self, right? Jen?
Yes,
전화 가사르와.
You are a person, right?
yes.
전화 열어와.
You exist, right?
제가 다잉에 영이지도.
So there is a you, there is a self and a person, right?
It is, right,
So you are the self and the person. So you are a self and person, right?
아주 담에다 person 집어 기체 멤버. 아주 다다 가다 제가 치와 집어를 가래 맞.
So we're not talking about selfless. And
Just talk in general, the meaning of self.
It says serve and person.
So,
self and
Yes.
person, yes.
so if we call the self the Atman, that's the self. I'll say that's the self. There's another self that we think the ignorance, fundamental ignorance, produces the idea of a self. This is not a self. It's not a permanent thing. It can be refuted by wisdom. This is the selflessness of persons. I'm a person. I think I have a self. I think I have something permanent, like an Atman that makes me up. But when I learn wisdom, I refute the self of persons, and I say a person is selfless. That means it has no Atman. It has no permanence. It has no soul, no unchanging thing. That does not exist. So that is the self. The self is, to me, this is the Atman. This is the thing that is refuted. There's another self. It's the self that I think that I am. I, me, mine, all of the ignorant graspings. These graspings create the idea of a self. This is what is refuted. This is not an actual self. It's the product of ignorance. It is not, and the Atman is also not an actual self because it is permanent and unchanging. And we know how to refute permanent and unchanging. So I don't have a self, an Atman, and I also don't have a self in an ignorant imputed I and me and mine either. I don't have either one, but I am a person if we mean like I have at the moment, I have 5 aggregates or maybe like the Kurukulla, maybe I'm this aggregates, maybe not, maybe something more, maybe something less.
That's
No,
good.
no,
Okay,
no.
okay, that's good. And
그러면
da 사제
다 쓰는 거죠. 다 여러 다 앞만서 다들 단진 그렇게 시도. 단진도 여마라.
다도 야고 매버지.
응.
아니 다 사제 다 사제 왜 몰라죠.
So we're not talking about the self that is apprehended or grasped by the ignorance, you know. That's the grasping, the self-grasping ignorance, self-grasping ignorance. No, we're not talking about that kind of self. We're just talking about self, the I. Does I exist or not? Is there I? Is there I that can be reborn? Is there an I that can be enlightened or no?
I am happy. I am not happy. I am sad. I want to go. I want to live.
No, of course not. Of course not. Of
So
course
that
not.
kind of I,
When you
does that kind of I exist or not?
a mind directly observing emptiness sees no object. There is no I. There is no I in that perception. Direct perception of emptiness does not involve any I, no I.
No, Geshe is not talking about the perception of I. Geshe is talking about just the I itself.
There is no I.
There's no I. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Na saje yo marwe.
So there's no I who can gain enlightenment?
There's no I who can gain enlightenment. There is the Kurukulla. There is the person who can gain enlightenment by eliminating the I.
아니 내 조사가 말해.
So I don't create merits?
You create merit through the being, the
No.
Kurukulla.
Do I create merit or not?
There's no I. Merit is created by the Kurukulla, which is the person, through activities. And the Kurukulla changes time.
아니 나 지금도 라요 말해.
So you can't say I'm happy, I'm not happy?
You can say it all you want. It doesn't mean there's an I.
That's good. 아니 내 로조 책을 락매.
You can't say I'm studying?
That is obvious. That is obvious from the 12 links.
That's true or not? The I can study or no?
The I cannot study. There is no I.
Okay.
Prove to me there is an I.
So I can create a merit. I can study, right?
No, I cannot.
Oh, you cannot cook?
I cannot do that. Maybe
can
a
uproot.
Pudgala could do that. Something that's the aggregates, but it's not different from the aggregates, but it's not the same as the aggregates. Maybe that could do it. Not I. I is a ignorant misconception. I is an ignorant misconception that does not understand the same nature of all phenomena, which is dependently arisen and empty. If you are in that respect, without the I already.
저랑 메타데 가르 담에 데 가르 데마 마트마데 메라 요르베.
So when you're saying that I do not exist, are you saying the I that's existing from its own side doesn't exist?
The I that you ignorantly perceive to be a self does not exist. No.
그래서
다 가서 덴버드베 덴징기 지금 나 유에 선배 가지어라. 뒤에 말했어. 내가 가디요 말.
데링 아니면 저도 가 요르와.
So yeah, so that kind of I doesn't exist, but the I in general exists, right?
You want to talk about a conventionally existent I?
Exactly.
Oh, you want to talk about a conventionally existent things have no inherent existence either. So you can
That's
call
right.
it whatever you want.
That's the I we're talking about, conventional
Yeah,
I.
that I, all conventional existence in the Prasangika view, you know very well, is not arisen. It's dependently arisen. There is no self to it. There is no I anywhere there. A conventional I believe in, an I grasp. All of it, no. Does not,
William,
cannot
His Holiness says-
exist.
William, His Holiness says if you don't believe in an I, if you don't believe that your I, stick a pin in your finger.
Yeah, that's what Ligwe Poche said. If you think you have lost the conception of the I, stick the needle in your flesh and see how fast the I comes back to you. That only means that that's an ignorant I. That only means that that's an ignorant I, not that it is an existent I. The ignorance is so strong that even when you sit and you say, "Oh, I've realized selflessness," and then you put the needle in and you say, "Oh, ouch," you know. But this is not the I. This is still the ignorant I. You think you lost it. The pin shows you didn't lose it. That's Lingua Boshe example.
나 요나 가지고 나 요나.
So if the I were to exist, how will it exist?
The I does not exist.
No, if it exists.
If it existed, it would exist as a product of an ignorant matter of thinking, that you would separate yourself from the other. In that moment that you separate, you make the enemy, you make two, you make duality, and in that moment you lose reality, which is one. It has to be one because it is all of one nature, empty of inherent existence. There is only one type of existence, that is the existence empty of any inherency. The glass is conventional object.
믹시에도 요르베.
The glasses, does it exist?
Conventionally.
Kunzobor yours.
근접도 요나 요거 적으러 와.
So if it exists conventionally, it does exist, right?
It exists conventionally and it functions. If you throw it on the floor, it will break.
제자.
Yeah, but if you say it
근접도 요나 요거 적으러. 대도 요거
it
찍으면.
exists, right?
What's that?
Candice?
I didn't hear
근접도
you.
요나 요거 적으러. 대답을 저기 찍으면. 근접도 요나 요거 적으러 와.
So everything that exists has to exist conventionally, right? There's nothing existing ultimately.
그래서 근접도 요나 요거 적으러 와.
So
And
if it
what-
exists conventionally, that means it exists, right?
It exists through the power of ignorance. It exists as people ordinarily say. You're the Geshe, I'm Bill. We're two different people. I am not you, you are not me. We are the same nature, we are exactly the same. So
So-
ultimately, there is no you, there's no me, there's no glasses. But conventionally, when you turn on the light goes on. When you drop the piano on you, you die. If you're under the piano crushes you and kills you.
Okay, give me the yes or yes, no, okay? Give me the yes, no answer, okay? 가지 컨셉도 있는 요거 저거래 좋은 말이.
So the question is, if it exists conventionally, does it exist or not?
I just need the yes, no answer, okay? Otherwise we not finish.
The Buddha said, I do not refute the world. What the world says is true, I accept as true. So the conventional existence is accepted by people. If I say it doesn't exist, then people say, well, you must be an idiot. You know, it exists. The glasses are here, they exist. So we say, yes, they exist conventionally, yes.
Say the convention 요거도 요거 요로.
So if it exists conventional, that means it exists, right?
It does not exist. It means it does not exist ultimately.
망각해져 대답도 요거제 지금에 대답을 줘 말인데 요 망각 타마 켈링 그러와.
Yeah, so that is accepted. That is accepted that it does not exist ultimately, but does it exist conventionally? If it exists conventionally, does that mean it exists or not?
It depends by the definition of exist. If ultimate existence, if yogic perception is the true model, then no, it doesn't exist. I mean, the Prasangika is very clear. The conventional things are accepted as functional. They're accepted as what people ordinarily think, but that it does not mean they have any ultimate existence. So when you say exist, you can't use the word exist one time, you mean ultimately exist, and another time you mean something else. There's only one way things exist ultimately.
제당에 저 넬라기 그래.
그런 그저 담에다 쉐드 다 유셔 홀라.
Okay, that's good. Good to study more, think about more. You know, if 가르다나 네 로조 야우 맞지나 따따텔라 뭐지. 제가 같이 야고 고뉴체로라. 나도 다니데 여와도 요거 최등하더라고요. 그래서 대담 형 생에 쓰지요 말이.
So anyway, yeah. So I think it's going to go too much, you know, if we keep on talking like that. So so nobody's saying that things exist ultimately. So no one saying things exist ultimately. So if it exists conventionally, then that's how we say it exists. That's the conclusion.
여타의 가르에서나 안에 땐네 따바레스 땐주레스 대요나 요급초레스.
So how does it exist conventionally is by depending on cause and conditions, parts, and so forth, right? So because it exists by depending on so and so, therefore it exists.
Yeah, but dependent arising is the same as emptiness. Dependent arising equals emptiness. Therefore, conventionally existent things exist by dependent arising, which is exactly the same as saying that they are empty of inherent existence. So it's once you equate dependent arising with emptiness, then you can say whatever you want. If you say dependent arising, fine. To me, I hear empty. Dependent arising, empty.
That's good. 제다 대제다 간도 단 나지 타니에 자다잖아. 아니 다다 강사다 제원도 된다 치바 이스. 그 타니에 자던 거 전에 조사 도저히 타니에 자다 말아서 이어서라고 그랬어.
So anyway, and so when you're talking about the self and the person and the being, you know, so these are all same meaning. It's just in a different terms used in general.
그래서 땅가 상제 요가 조사 도저 제가 요새 남지 타니도 시작을 해.
So we use the term I, you know, says I create a merit, I can be enlightened.
아니 가사도 직책도 다 군도 직책도 타니 파자 그랬어.
And then we also use the term person, like a person can do this, person can do that, person can accumulate merit and so forth.
제다 빠데다비 지대 답이 구도 말하시더라. 된 지대가 타니다양 된다 거든요.
And so just like the Chandakirti said that we should not lose the conventions of the world. So the terms used by the worldly people, it has to accord with that.
I said
Okay,
that.
now we have Temple. Yeah, now we have Temple pass. Anyway, good one. Thank you. Good, Laura. Good, I say experience. Debate is good. Okay. Good morning. Okay, now we stop.
Right,
Short one.
do a short prayers. Thanksgiving under the offering. All my prayer for His Holiness and that snow mountain and circle land, source of every benefit and joy, may Lord Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezig remain like those samsara friends. Maybe the snowland teachings and transmigratory beings who extensively clarifies the path that unifies happiness and compassion. The lotus in the hand, Lord Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, make all your holy wishes. So, you who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Mountain victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels, Savior, myself, and others, your disciples, please live long. For this virtue may I swiftly, having gained Guru Buddhist state, place each and every sentient being without exception in that state. Precious supreme Bodhi mind, may it where unborn arise and born never decline, good in peace forevermore. We make say way to attention, Rizik, you make it, they won't go double and the diploma.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night. Do the next week homework.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Geshe.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Namcho. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Damcho.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Good night. Good morning.
Thank you, Geshe.
Thank you. Someone already film here.